All right, so we're doing a timing belt on this 2001 Subaru with a 2.5, and this is going to be the same for a whole bunch of Subarus. And so right now, I disconnected these two wires for the fans. There's one there and one here. And the little tab, you just lift up on it. We got to unhook these two transmission cooler lines. It's just a couple of hose clamps. I got the bottom radiator hose already off. It's just one hose clamp. I'm draining that. And I'll show you on the top. It's the pretty straightforward radiator to get out. But once those two transmission cooler lines are off, then we'll be ready to lift the whole radiator and fan assembly up out of our way. Okay, next, since we've already got the stuff undone in the bottom for the radiator and fans to come out, just undo this one radiator hose clamp and get the hose off. These were 12mm bolts for the two brackets to hold the radiator. I already have those off. So these just come out of the way. And then the whole radiator, and I should be able to do this one-handed, literally just lifts right out. Pretty, like I said, pretty straightforward stuff. And now with the radiator out of the way, there is major room and access to get to all the timing belt. We still gotta take off some fan belts and brackets and things, but now we got access to the timing belt. Belt out of the way, and then we take this, I loosen all of these and we'll just take them the rest of the way out. Get that out of the way. The power steering pump's getting replaced because it leaks, so I'm going to take that off completely. There's 3 bolts. You just go through the hole in the pulley to get those off. There's one there, there's one right there, there's one right there, and then this power steering pump will just lift right up out of the bracket and out of the way. There's a wire connected, and it looks like that's just a little push tab. Get that off, and then we'll just kind of lay that up out of the way for right now. But like I said, that's leaking and I'm going to replace it. So I have a feeling this was a homeowner job the last time, because this nut came loose on the crankshaft really easy. I have limited space to get in there, so I have this stubby 3/8 drive. And right now it's got a 6 amp battery, but usually I put this thing on, this 12 amp. And it has a lot of power, in fact, almost as much as the 1/2-inch drive. But I didn't even have to go to the big battery because that nut or bolt on this crankshaft was not very tight. Not as tight as it should have been. All right, so now that the bottom crankshaft pulley is off, which was right here, now all we got to do is take off a bunch of 10mm bolts, all these guys right here, all the way around these plastic covers, and we will expose our timing belt. All right, all the bolts are out, and this timing cover should just kind of pull off of here. Out it comes. There's the timing belt exposed now. All right, I'm changing the seals behind the crank pulley, which is this guy, and both cam seals. So I gotta loosen these cam sprocket bolts. So I'm gonna leave the belt on and use the belt to help hold those from turning while I get the bolts loose So yeah, that came loose pretty easy too, which tells me that somebody's been in here before and they did not put these very tight, but I want them in there enough that I can still rotate the engine, get the timing marks all on top dead center before I take the belt off. And so to rotate the crankshaft, I just put the crank nut back in, and this is just an old axle nut I used as a spacer. And so now I can rotate the engine with this wrench, and I can bring these timing marks. You can see that there's a mark right there, and we want to bring that up to the top. And I'm pretty sure that it goes right there. Actually, I believe it's right there. And then we got a timing mark right here, and you can see it's marked right there. So we're on top dead center. We got a little, if you look, get that close enough. Got a little notch right there. And it's hard to see, but there's a little notch and a little notch. And anyway, it's straight up. So we are on top dead center. The timing mark for the crank, believe it or not, is right there. There's a little notch right there, and it's lined up. Honestly, some of these timing marks are not very good, and sometimes they don't perfectly line up. So you got to get this seam right here is the mark for this one cam, and then this one has a little notch in the plastic cover right there. But those plastic covers aren't always super accurate either. If I get the phone over here, you can see it's pretty lined up with the tooth. But yeah, these timing marks are not great sometimes. You just got to get them. Sometimes you just mark it before you take it off so it goes on exactly the same. All right, so on this, to release the tension, this is a hydraulic tensioner. I'm just going to take the whole arm off. And there we go. The belt tension is off. Get this thing out of there. And now we can get the belt off, but I'm changing all the components. This is getting changed. We're putting in, I think this is the oil pump. Pretty sure it is. So that stays. But the water pump, which is this, that's getting replaced. So the tensioner and the idlers and this bottom idler here will get replaced. I was wrong. Usually when they got a pulley with teeth, it's because they mean business, but I'm pretty sure this is just an idler pulley. That's not the oil pump. The cam pulleys are both off now. There's one of them, and that's what it looks like under the cam pulley. This seal right here, this brown thing, is what's going to get replaced. Here's the other cam pulley, and there's the other seal. So let's get this crank pulley off because we're going to replace that seal as well so we don't have any oil leaks. This one right here, you can see how wet it is down here, and it was actually dripping down. Made a mess on the bottom of the radiator hose and on these two transmission cooler lines because this seal is leaking pretty bad. I got the two cam seals changed. I just kind of pried them out of there with a screwdriver. You got to be careful though that you don't scratch the housing or the shaft. And then on this crank seal, I'm gonna undo, I already took the bolt out of this sensor. I'm just gonna move that up out of the way. I don't know that it would interfere, but I don't want to damage it. And this should just pull off, but for some reason it moves a little bit and then it kind of hangs up. So I'm gonna give it a little gentle, well, there we go. It's gonna come off. So Looks like that seal's been changed and somebody caked a bunch of silicone around the outside of it. I need 2 hands, but anyway, you get the idea, and then I'll show you how to get the seal out on this one. It's the same for the cams. So this is my weapon of choice, and I just get this thing, I kind of pry straight up against the seal to get it, to kind of make a gap, and then just pry sideways, and I think that's going to be good enough to switch over, if I can find it, this bigger screwdriver that doesn't bend as easy, and then get that one in there and pry. I'm working with one hand and filming with the other, but anyway, so that's out now. I don't know why they caked it with silicone on the outside, but anyway, so out that one goes. I don't know what brand these brown ones are that came out of here. Maybe they're the original ones, but I use Precision. And the rubber just seems softer and more pliable. Here's the part number for the cams. And here is the part number for the crank seal. So you need 2 cams and 1 crank. So there's your part numbers. So I just put a little bit of fresh oil on the lip of the seal. And then this has a nice bevel on the edge of this, but sometimes they're really squared off. And you got to be really careful when you're putting this in that you don't snag the lip of the seal on that sharp edge, if there is one. Sorry for the bad camera angle, but I try to get that to go in straight like that. Then I'm going to use a socket and a hammer and just gently tap it in. All right, the crank pulley is in. The crank seal is in. And everything's looking good there. There's our cam seal in. There's another cam seal in. And so now we got to take off the water pump and the idler pulleys. And then we can start putting everything back together. Just wanted to note that this idler pulley is smooth. And this bottom pulley here has a lip on the back of it, and that's to keep the belt centered on these pulleys so the belt can't just walk off the back side of the pulley down there. That's the guide pulley, so make sure you get that one in the right spot.